Hello and welcome to video 2 in the Navigator series. In the first video we just went over the basics. In this video we're going to start filling out the Navigator with more information to make it look more like how my work in progress did. So without further ado, let's jump straight in and get started. Okay, so now we're going to start to fill out or beef up the Navigator in terms of information. So to do that, you right click on the Navigator and come down to Navigator Options. Now, depending on what is ticked here, will denote what is seen in the Navigator. So for instance, if you look at these comments, if I untick them, they disappear. So generally, I have all of these things ticked. Okay. I also tick auto-linked characters. So that will then show you all the characters that are mentioned within any given chapter or scene. I also like to have show occurrences ticked. So it tells me how many times, not just who appeared in the scene, but how many times. I'm now going to go, I also like to keep it in a separate line. So I have in separate line ticked, because if I untick that, it squashes everything in onto the line. You know, for instance, here there's a scene and it shows my characters on the same line as the scene. I prefer it on a separate line. Statistics, again, you can pick and choose what you want to see here. So I keep everything on a separate line. I don't abbreviate. I'd rather see words than just W for the word count. And generally I have word count, time last change, author of last change, which is useful if there's multi-authors working on your document. So if there's 2 or 3 of you working on the one document, it will show you who edited last, and time of first change. I also like to see my timeline threads in the Navigator. So by ticking that, it shows me all the timeline entries, and I like to see the colours of the timeline. So I've assigned specific colours to chapters, scenes and events, and by turning this on, it will assign the colours to those chapters, scenes and events. Note options. Again, this refers to what is seen within not only the Navigator, but the info column. So I'm going to turn the info columns on using this toggle. And if you watch here, as I tick items now appears in the info columns. If I tick locations now appear. So again, I have everything turned on. These refer to what is seen within the Navigator, but not the info column. So again, if I untick research, this is research. If I untick it, it disappears. So again, here I have everything turned on. With characters, this will say who appears in it. Exactly the same thing again, you know. So if I untick, there's Captain Owen Rogers, if I can find him. If I untick it, he disappears. Again, I leave everything switched on. Okay, so that fills out how much information you can get at a glance within the Navigator. But there's a few other extra interesting things you can do. The first thing, if I right click on any given chapter or scene, I can ghost it. So for instance, I'll go to this scene, I'll right click and I'll go ghost text. Now, what does ghost text mean? It means, let's say you're working on your book, but you're not sure about any given scene or chapter, but you don't want to delete it. If you ghost it, you'll be able to see it within your book. As you can see here, the text is being changed in color. But what won't happen is if you export your book to ebook or paperback, the ghosted text will not be exported. So rather than delete it, it just hides it. And if I right click again and go untick ghosted text, that text will now be part of the main document again, so that if you export, it goes with it. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do is apply a status to a chapter, which you do by right clicking, and you can go to status, and I could say, for instance, this needs revision, this chapter, and you can see it places an icon within the document. I could do the same for the scene and so on, and you can manually change the colors as well. If you don't want to assign colors via the timeline, you can manually change them to whatever you want. Speaking of timelines, if you go on to any entry, be it a scene or a chapter, and you right click, you can instantly go show in timeline, and it will take you to that timeline entry. You can change how this heading appears within the Navigator by, again, right clicking, going to style, and you could have that italic or italic bold if you like. To change the headings within the main document, you would do the same thing again, except you would come down to H change to, and that would, within this menu here, you can change the style of heading within your main document. You can also delete the chapters and so on. So the Navigator is I just love it. It's just so great to have open, and you know, when you're working on your book, it's just a godsend. Okay, so there you have it. That was the second video in the Navigator series. I think you'll agree it's a great tool to have sitting down the side of your document as you're working. It gives you tons and tons of feedback about your book, but not only that, it's a great tool for accessing the back end of your book, as I like to call it, to create those characters, chapters and so on. So until next time, see you later.